So, we're all about digging into those fascinating nooks and crannies of the political landscape. And this article you sent over is a perfect example why most people in Nagaland don't like the BJP, The Untold Truth, from The Accidental Explorer. I mean, wow, that title alone just grabs you, right?
Yeah, it really does. And it speaks to a sort of a bigger question that I find really intriguing is like you have this major national party, right? And they seem to be encountering some serious pushback in this particular state within India.
Exactly. And I know you've been wanting to explore more of those, like the finer points of Indian politics, those nuances that we don't always hear about in the big national stories. So I think this deep dive into this article should really give us a good look into that.
Oh, absolutely. It really does highlight that incredible diversity within India. It's not a monolithic entity, right? There are so many different perspectives and experiences, and this article kind of brings that to the forefront.
Okay, so our mission, if you will, is to really pinpoint those core reasons why there's this resistance to the BJP in Nagaland, according to this source. And it looks like we've got religion, historical political aspirations, a controversial law, and even some apparent contradictions in the BJP's approach to Nagaland to unpack. The article promises some, explosive reasons and a shocking perspective. So let's see if it leads up to the hype, right?
Let's do it.
So right off the bat, the article zeroes in on religion.
Yeah, and what's immediately striking is that stark contrast, right? Nagaland is overwhelmingly Christian, like around 90%, and mostly Baptist. And when you consider that the BJP is often described as promoting Hindutva, that emphasis on Hindu cultural and religious identity as central to India's character, well, the potential for tension is kind of baked in, isn't it?
For sure. And the source suggests that, a major concern for a lot of Nagas is that the BJP's broader policies are ultimately aimed at establishing Hindu dominance across India.
Right. It's not just about different faiths coexisting. It's about a fear of their own distinct identity being marginalized or even erased. And, that's something that's historically been so central to the Naga people's sense of themselves within India.
Absolutely. And it's not just about policy on paper.
Yeah.
The article makes this really important point about the connection between national events and how they're perceived locally.
Yeah.
They specifically mention attacks on Christians in other parts of India.
Right, which totally makes sense.
Yeah.
It fuels a sense of unease and mistrust when you see things like that happening, even if they're far away. It shows how events on a national level can have a very real impact on sentiments and political attitudes at the local level.
And then they bring up this really specific flashpoint, the 2018 attempted beef ban. They present it as a moment that triggered a huge outcry in Nagaland, where beef is a staple part of their diet.
It was seen as a direct intrusion on local customs and traditions, wouldn't you say? I mean, it really highlights the importance of understanding local realities, right?
Mm-hmm.
A policy that might be accepted or even welcomed in one part of the country can be deeply offensive, and a violation of cultural identity in another.
It's like in Nagaland, that attempted beef ban wasn't just about what people eat, it was about their way of life and their right to make those choices for themselves.
Exactly.
Then the article poses this really direct question: can a political party that's so closely associated with Hindutva ever truly be accepted in a state with such a strong Christian majority?
It's a huge question, and it kind of hangs over everything else we're talking about here. Can a party that's seen as being rooted in a particular religious viewpoint genuinely connect with and earn the trust of a population that holds a different faith? The article seems to suggest that this is a major obstacle for the BJP in Nagaland.
Totally. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. The article then dives into this long-standing issue of Naga political aspirations, specifically the desire for sovereignty, which goes all the way back to 1947. They argue that many Nagas hoped the BJP would finally deliver a fair Naga peace accord. This is not a new issue, is it? It's been simmering for decades.
Oh, absolutely. The desire for greater self-determination or even complete sovereignty has a long and complicated history in Nagaland. As the article points out, that promise of finally resolving this issue carries a lot of weight for the Naga people.
They highlight the signing of that framework agreement with the NSCN back in 2015 as a moment that really raised expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then they emphasize that almost a decade later, nothing has happened. That lack of tangible progress has got to be a major source of frustration and maybe even anger. I mean, when you take a big step like that and raise hopes for a resolution to a conflict that's been going on for so long, the fact that things have stalled, well, it can really damage trust.
No question. The article suggests that this lack of movement on the peace accord is a key reason why there's so much disillusionment with the BJP among Nagas.
It even quotes Naga leaders who now believe the BJP might have used the promise of a resolution just to get votes without any real intention of actually settling the issue.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty serious accusation. It suggests a real breakdown of trust between the Naga leadership and the National Party.
Right, and it gets even more complicated because the article then mentions that some political analysts believe the BJP might be intentionally using a divide-and-rule strategy, maybe favoring certain Naga factions over others.
That's a really heavy claim, and if it's true, it would definitely deepen that existing mistrust. It suggests that they might be prioritizing their own political goals over a genuine and lasting peace.
So the big question that comes up here is, was that 2015 peace deal more of a political tactic than a real commitment to finding a solution? It makes you think about political integrity and how long-term conflicts are really addressed, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It raises questions about whether short-term political gains are being put ahead of true reconciliation and fulfilling those deep-seated aspirations.
Okay, so moving on to another major point of contention, and this one is really sensitive. The Armed Forces Special Powers Act, or AFSPA, the article calls it a draconian law that gives the Indian Army these really broad powers in Nagaland, like the ability to arrest, raid, and even use lethal force with very little accountability.
Yeah, AFSPA is a very controversial law. The scope
Right.
of the powers it gives to security forces in areas that are declared disturbed areas has been a source of concern for a long time, especially when it comes to potential human rights violations and the impact on everyday life for civilians.
The article directly links AFSPA to human rights abuses, and they specifically mention that tragic incident in the Mon district in 2021 where 14 innocent Nagas were killed by Indian security forces.
That was horrific. It really intensified the calls to repeal AFSPA and solidified that feeling that it's a tool of oppression. It's a stark reminder of the potential human cost when you have such sweeping powers given to security forces.
The article also points out that whenever Nagas demand the removal of AFSPA, the BJP allegedly either delays the decision or just ignores them.
That's a problem because it feeds into this belief that the BJP wants to keep military control over the region indefinitely. And it can be seen as a lack of empathy or disregard for the very real concerns of the people there.
So the article asks, why is the BJP so hesitant to remove AFSPA even after years of protest and all the resentment it causes? It makes you wonder about what's really going on behind the scenes, right? What are the strategic or political calculations that are keeping this law in place?
Right. Is it purely about security concerns? Or are there other political factors that make removing AFSPA a difficult decision for the BJP? The article seems to suggest that there's more to it than meets the eye.
Okay, so now the article throws a bit of a curveball. It says that despite all this resistance, the BJP is actually silently growing in Nagaland.
Now, that is interesting. How can a political party be facing so much opposition on these key issues and still manage to increase its presence? There must be some strategic maneuvering going on.
Well, according to the article, the tactic they're using is forming alliances with local Naga political parties. They specifically mention the NDPP. It shows how important those regional partnerships can be, even when there are big ideological differences.
It's classic coalition politics, right? You team up with parties that already have a base of support and understand the local dynamics. It gives you a way to gain influence in areas where you might not be able to connect with voters directly.
And then they drop this bombshell. The article alleges that the BJP provides huge financial incentives to politicians who support them.
Oh, if that's true, it really raises some ethical questions about how political influence works and the role of money in elections. It suggests that support might be bought rather than earned through genuine representation.
And it doesn't stop there. The article also claims that some churches and local leaders are being influenced by organizations that are backed by the BJP.
So it's not just about political alliances and financial incentives, they're also working to build influence within the community itself. Cultivating relationships with influential local organizations could be a way to shape public opinion over time.
So the question is the BJP using financial power and strategic alliances to essentially force its way into Nagaland's politics, even though there's all this resistance on the ground?
It definitely paints a picture of a party that's determined to expand its reach using a variety of methods, even in the face of some pretty significant obstacles.
And to wrap things up, the article looks ahead to the future. It acknowledges that despite these challenges, the BJP has actually increased its political representation in the Nagaland Assembly from 0 seats in 2013 to 12 seats in both 2018 and 2023. So they're making gains even if it's a slow and steady process.
Right, and that upward trend, even if it's gradual, is something to pay attention to. It tells us that the BJP's strategies are having an impact.
The article ends by asking these really thought-provoking questions. Can the BJP eventually gain control of Nagaland if they keep doing what they're doing? Will the people of Nagaland keep resisting and hold on to their Christian identity and their desire for tribal sovereignty? And is a BJP chief minister in Nagaland even a possibility down the line?
Those are the million-dollar questions. The future of politics in Nagaland is going to depend on a lot of factors. Will the BJP's strategies continue to be effective? Will the Naga people maintain their cultural and political identity? And will those long-standing issues like the peace accord and AFSPA finally be addressed?
So as we've seen from this deep dive into this one article, the relationship between the BJP and Nagaland is complicated. There's religion, historical aspirations for autonomy, concerns about human rights, and questions about the BJP's political tactics.
Yeah.
It's not just a simple case of people disliking a party. It's much deeper than that.
What I find really interesting is how a national party that's so powerful in many parts of India faces these kinds of challenges in a state with such a unique history, culture, and political landscape. It shows how dynamic and complex Indian federalism really is.
It definitely makes you think about how national parties can engage with regions that have these distinct identities and what the implications are when financial and political power are used to try and gain influence.
It's a fascinating case study. And as always, with any single source, there are many other perspectives out there. I think it would be really valuable to explore the history of the Naga people in more depth, to really understand the nuances of that stalled peace accord, and to delve into the ongoing debates around AFSPA. It's a topic that deserves further investigation.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for bringing this thought-provoking article to our attention. It's definitely given us a lot to ponder.
My pleasure. Always happy to dive into these complex issues with you.
Until next time.
See you then.